Coogs house. The Houston Cougars look to extend all these win streaks and hand Texas Tech the Blues this weekend, and it's going to be a blowout.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth. And whether you're a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Please make your first listen each and every day. If you want to join the conversation but you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. Let's go ahead and have it. Your first and honest opinion of the Houston Cougar basketball uniforms they're debuting this weekend. Now, full disclosure, your opinion might change by the time the game is over, but put down what you got right now in the comment section down below. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time, the best place to get last tickets, the lowest price and guaranteed. More on that later, but Houston and Texas Tech meet on the hardwood Saturday in another Big 12 matchup. Texas Tech comes into this one at 16-4. Houston enters the game 17-3, and that's frankly a lot closer in wins and loss records than I think these two programs at the present tense actually are. We're going to get to that in a second. But Texas Tech is having a good year. I don't want to downplay that too much. As far as big wins go, they've beaten Syracuse, Arizona, Cincinnati. Close losses, which I think count for something. Close loss on a neutral floor to St. Joe's, close loss on a neutral floor to A&M. UCF beat them close in Lubbock, which I think is pretty big for UCF. And then they lost to Iowa State in Lubbock as well in an overtime game. And I want to stress that two of those close losses were in Lubbock. Lubbock is a tough place to play. It just is every single year, whether or not they were Bobby Knight, was it Beard? Beard in the 2019 Final Four run. It's just a tough place to play, right? And I think that it's still going to be a tough place to play this year when Houston goes there. Going to be a very different game. But as far as Houston playing in Houston, I think Houston wins this one by a lot. Now, part of that is because, honestly, Texas Tech plays an offense that plays very much into Houston's hands. They want long possessions. They want 2-point shots. And frankly, they're kind of a slow down and find the right shot kind of team, looking for post drop-offs and that kind of stuff. We'll get to the personnel in a second. There's a major personnel thing to keep an eye on in the second segment. But on the whole, in this one, Texas Tech shoots the ball very well from three, 38% from threes, top 25 nationally, but they're outside the top 100 in three-point field goals attempted. They're not taking advantage. That's something I think they do fairly well. I guess I could also hear that part of the reason they do it very well is because they don't do it too much, yada, yada. Either way, when teams are going to get Houston, they're going to get hot from behind the arc and hit a couple that they normally don't. We look at their three losses: San Diego State, Alabama, and Auburn. Houston has given up stretches where they just get a couple crazy heat check kind of shots from behind the arc. Texas Tech doesn't typically do that, and so I'm not worried about that happening in this one. I will say, from an efficiency perspective, Grant McCasland in his second year at Texas Tech has probably the most efficient offense when the season's over that Texas Tech has ever had. I'm including those Bob Knight years and including that Final Four run. I think that was 2019. After that, before I think that was 2019. This offense for them is incredibly efficient when you look at analytical data and things like that. Top 20 field goal percentage, top 50 in non-steal turnovers. Look at more raw data. But just in pure raw scoring, it's the third best offense in the Big 12, averaging over 81 points per game. And I'm not saying they'll break 80. I do think they'll score some points. I think this is probably somewhere where they get, more than the 55 or so that Houston was letting up. I think they'll certainly get more than the 49 points those sorry Mountaineers scored last week. But I just don't think they'll be able to keep Houston out of their own 80. I think Houston scored a lot of points in this game looking at Texas Tech's defense. And I don't think it's a schematics issue for McCaslin and what Texas Tech is doing, but just a personnel one. Honestly, Houston's going to be, this is kind of one of the few games for Houston that they're going to be like bigger at 4 out of 5 spots. When we get to the matchups in the second segment, I'll talk more about that. But what that's going to lead to is aggressive, attacking, layups, post-ups. Frankly, attacking means free throws because you're going to draw contact. And Houston on the glass should have a field day offensively. If you look at numbers, and Texas Tech does very well in most numbers, Texas Tech is like middle of college basketball in terms of letting up offensive rebounds. Houston obviously isn't very high. I think it's top 15 in offensive rebound percentage and rate and things like that. And then you watch the video and you realize, oh, Texas Tech is just an athletic rebounding team. They got like tall, long guys that kind of just watch and jump. Houston's got guys that are doing physical things and working. And this could really turn into the kind of thing where Houston's getting second and third and fourth shots. And if they get that many shots per possession, they're going to score a lot of points. Now, again, I said I think Tech's offense is worth keeping an eye on. And if you watch those close losses, including the ones that were in Lubbock, they're high-scoring affairs. I think the biggest thing will be that they're trying to drop the ball off to whoever the power forward is. Again, matchups are in a second for dunk kind of stuff or 10-footer kind of stuff. And what Houston does a really good job of is forcing those dunks to become the 8-footers and those 8-footers become the 12-footers and kind of move people back off their spots. Houston does a really good job on that and the inverse. If you're a three-point team, to run you off three-point line. Samson does a good job of taking what you do best away and making you beat him with your second pitch, right? Not to use baseball metaphors too much, but I don't know what Texas Tech's best second pitch will be. They do shoot the three ball again at a very high percentage, even if they don't do it a whole heck of a lot. So I could see that becoming what they fall back to. But on the whole, when they get forced into that second moment, again, I watched their Iowa State game, trying to double use that one. Watched the Arizona game, see what they did. And then I watched a really, really quick one. Could not have been a full game of the abbreviated TCU game from the other day to see what the more recent guys look like. And I don't want to say this. I understand that Iowa State's very good, and Iowa State and Houston's going to be a fun game to watch. I think there were things Iowa State could have done better in that game when they played Texas Tech, and the game went to overtime, and Iowa State still won, right? And so I feel like when you factor in the Fertitta Center and the home crowd and the energy around the Houston Blue and all those things, I'm predicting a rather large win. KenPom has this as a 9-point win for Houston presently. They're not, I don't think, factoring in one key potential matchup thing, but they got it 69-60 Houston. Torvik has it as more like a 12.5-point spread, the Torvik ratings and stuff like that. And I'm thinking it's going to be closer to 15 once you factor in some free throws. I'd go 77-62. Again, 62 points is a lot of points on Houston's defense this year. That's almost 10 more than they're getting per game on average, right? I just think Houston's going to find ways to get a lot of points at home crowd. First time you're at home since the big Kansas win. The crowd and the energy in the program's like palpable, right? And so I could see that kind of being something they ride into. Now, I mentioned a couple times there are key matchups in this one that I guess could prove me wrong. I don't think they will, but we'll talk about those in 1 second. But first, a reminder today's show is brought to you by Game Time. And attending NFL playoff games, big-time college basketball games, the Rockets are good, NBA games, whatever it is, you can get an experience like no other when you go to a live event. The energy, the excitement, the connection, other fans can be unmatched, right? I remember, going to big-time playoff games in the NBA and stuff like that, or NCAA tournament games or whatever. And this year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable memories and moments with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out of the fluff and chooses only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, which is being there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to Game Time. You can download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs. You're getting ready for Houston and Texas Tech this weekend. And again, I think this game's going to be a blowout. I think Houston's going to win by 15 points. And frankly, kind of coast to it. I think Houston's going to have a really great offensive day. Part of that is because I'm anticipating a guy from Texas Tech that was hurt last week not playing, and that's Darian Williams. Darian Williams is a 6'6" forward, good scorer, finishes well around the rim, strong guy. It really does a lot of things for them when he's on the floor, averaging 15 points, 5.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, kind of their best all-around player by a lot, right? He missed the TCU game in a boot and was listed as a game time decision, but after hearing the post game, or I guess talking to Locked On Texas Tech guys about that post game, it doesn't sound like it was a super big surprise he missed that game. And I'm going to be really honest. If I'm their coach, I worry about playing him in this hyper physical game with Houston and re-injuring it and missing a longer stretch. When truthfully, he may be more valuable in their home game next week against Baylor and stuff like that. And so I bet if he's like 85%, I don't think he plays, right? I think it's kind of thing where he's got to be feeling really good to come play. And Darian Williams is a difference maker, and he would certainly spoil my Houston Cougar blowout prediction if he plays in this one. I just don't think he plays. And so I think that's why I'm fairly comfortable saying I think Houston blows this one out. Now, if he's healthy, Darian Williams, that is, I think Juwan Roberts matches up with him. Just from an athleticism standpoint, Roberts is a little bit bigger, but can keep up with him on the perimeter. And I also want I'm being honest, I think Roberts is kind of the smartest forward defender. And there's some craftiness to what Darian Williams does. And so I want to kind of have that matchup there for Houston as well. Now, when he did not start or when he's been subbed out, a kid named JT Toppin comes in. Toppin was considered one of the top guys in the transfer portal last portal season. He was at New Mexico prior. He's taller. He's like 6'9". He's a little bit leaner. He's pretty athletic. And he's a DFW kid. I want to say he went to Faith Family. I'm not positive on that one. Don't quote me. But he's, Faith Family is the kind of place where like they play some real time, big time basketball. His points per game recently went up a lot because he got a pretty good game in Darian Williams' absence. He's up over 16 now. He had not started previously, kind of been in and out of that lineup, and has played some small forward. He got to move to more of that power forward spot and kind of excelled with Darian Williams out. I think he'll be my J1 Roberts matchup in this one, which ultimately I guess does leave Houston a little bit outside of one of the spot. We'll get to that in a second. I think that's where I'm going to put no Jawan Roberts on JT Toppin. Again, veteran presence, keep him off the boards, etc. Their big guy, Federico. That's actually his name. Said it twice. He was a big guy at Pitt, I think a year ago. It might have been 2 years ago. He's JoJo Tugler. Got JoJo Tugler all over him. He's the kind of guy that's going to be around the rim a lot for his offense, for those drop-offs and stuff like that, and offensive putbacks. That means JoJo Tugler gets to be around the rim a lot for defense. You also want JoJo Tugler's length on him against 6'11". He probably also has a 7'2", 7'3" wingspan, which means that JoJo actually has the longer wingspan in that matchup. But you'll see a lot of contest the rim, like a two-step gallop kind of contest the rim, peeling off of that. I am back and forth as what I think they're going to do at this other starting spot, because when you look at like what they did with no Darian Williams in, so they moved JT Toppin to more of a 4 spot, and then do you play at the 2 guard, the 3, the whatever. I kind of think they'll play Chance McMillan at the 3. Chance McMillan is a let's say good guard. He's a 6'2" guy, which is not going to make much sense when I talk about their 3 being a 6'5" guy in a second. But I kind of think Chance McMillan's the kind of guy that I want to put Terrence Arsenault on if Emmanuel Sharp does not start for Houston. And I'm kind of getting ready to anticipate Emmanuel Sharp not starting for Houston. After the game in West Virginia, Sampson said something to the effect of he wished he hadn't played him, or in hindsight, maybe he shouldn't have played him, or something like that. Sharp looked like he was in a lot of pain and probably needs some more rest. Houston's got a decent-sized break in the next week, which we'll talk about in the last segment here. A week of games they might not need him for, so he can take off Saturday and get through the next week. He might get some real time off to rest. So I think it'll be Terrence Arsenault that starts. I'm probably starting him on Chance McMillan, mostly because I think Chance McMillan's really good, and so I kind of want to put someone that can slow him down a little bit on. I want Terrence Arsenault's length, Terrence Arsenault's foot speed, Terrence Arsenault's athleticism. Chance McMillan's getting his own 14 points per game. He's pretty good scorer. And again, his points went up without Darian Williams in the lineup. So I'm thinking this Terrence Arsenault matchup, which leaves the other two guards being Kerwin Walton, who's the 6'5 perimeter player. He's like a 6'5 non-scorer, really. He's more of a defensive kind of guy. Kerwin Walton is listed at 205. He told me it was closer to 210. I believe he's a pretty big guy, but he doesn't look. He's not like a bull in a china closet big guy, right? He's not like going to run people over and stuff like that. So I'm putting LJ Cryer on him, and I think you can kind of almost hide Cryer on him now at a really, really low field goal attempts. I guess he got up a handful against TCU. But with very few 3-point field goal attempts, he is shooting a really high 3-point percentage, Kerwin Walton is, so LJ can't just leave him. But it's also not the kind of guy that I'm worried about beating LJ off the dribble, and that's kind of, when you've seen LJ Cryer get beat defensively, it's a lot more of that than like closing on a 3-point shooter. So I'm thinking Kerwin Walton, even though he's got a lot more size, he's a former North Carolina guy. I think that's the LJ matchup, which means that the matchup Houston wins by a lot may be one of the most important ones, and that's the point guard spot. Now, Elijah Hawkins runs the point a lot for Texas Tech. I almost forgot to talk about for Texas Tech. I say I almost forgot what I'm talking about because he's been to 3 schools. Elijah Hawkins started at Howard, then went to Minnesota, and is now at Tech. And he is the guy that runs the show a lot when you watch what they do. He's a pretty impressive guard. And the deal is that Houston's going to win in this matchup, though, is he listed at 5'10", $160. If you told me he's listed at 5'11", 160. If you told me he's 5'10", $155, I'd believe you. Milos should be just a gargantuan, look like a giant next to him. And that's really going to help Houston slow down what Tech's trying to do on offense, right? Because that's going to cut off passing lanes, cloud vision, slow down the offense, et cetera. And they already run a slow offense. You can't get that much slower. There is a shot clock, right? And so I feel like that's a matchup Houston wins by a lot. Now, the one switch I could see here being is that if you want to get more of a true height-to-height matchup, you could have LJ cover Elijah Hawkins and put Milos in a Kerwin Walton situation because the heights are closer in that instance. Either way, I think Houston does pretty well at most of these matchups. And again, there's really only one matchup that Houston is noticeably shorter at, and that's kind of a rarity for Houston. The bench is interesting because if both teams are healthy, I feel like Houston's bench is deeper, but with Sharp being out and Arsenault being put in the starting lineup, which I'm anticipating, have not seen reported at this point, but I'm anticipating the benches could kind of feel like a wash. The one interesting thing is that Texas Tech does not bring a lot of bigs off their bench. When they bring someone off their bench, it's simply guard, and then they play like a one big kind of set. Houston obviously has Francis and Malik Wilson. We'll probably see some Mercy Miller if Emmanuel Sharp is out, right? And so that's kind of a mixture of different types of athletes and bodies. That's, I think, an advantage for Houston because it kind of throw a bunch of different things at Tech, whereas Tech kind of just has the 2 punches here, right? As far as a matchups kind of thing goes, or as far as a roster construction kind of thing goes. I think it's a big advantage for Houston in this one. And obviously losing Terrence in the starting lineup will hurt your depth, but you're probably getting more minutes out of him as a starter. The other thing I think about this is that all these guys for Houston shoot a lot better at home typically. And so while you're thinking, like, do we go to our bench? How far do we go down our bench? I think bench guys do shoot better at home, so Mercy should get that run, as I mentioned. Um, yeah, I look at this and don't think that. So if Darian Williams plays and Emmanuel Sharp does not, I could be convinced that that's a lot of scoring on the floor that Houston's got to make up for. But on the whole, I just feel like if Darian Williams is out this thing, I don't see who beats their guy if Houston's got their five guys playing defense like they should on the floor, right? And so that's from out on that on the matchups. Again, could be proven wrong. I've been proven wrong before. I thought UCF would be a blowout, and it wasn't. But I want to talk a little bit about the stakes of the weekend and stakes of the game on Saturday for a second, as we typically do in a preview. But before we get to that, I want to show one more note from the folks that help support the show. Parker Ainsworth, Locked on Coogs, talking about Houston hosting Texas Tech in a blowout game that I think will be a blowout this weekend. Now, stakes for this one, I want to first show things I could think could make this one a weird one, because I always have to make sure I make time to talk about what can make this one a weird one. Having back-to-back road games and then coming back home kind of leaves open the idea of this being like a hangover feeling kind of game. You had an emotional win at Kansas. You had a tough win in West Virginia that you made tougher than it probably needed to be. It will be very normal to just feel a little, for lack of a better phrase, hungover this Saturday, right? Just having spent so much energy on the road, two travel games, and they were far enough apart that you didn't just like go straight from Kansas to West Virginia, right? Like that's a lot of wear and tear on your body, and frankly, just a lot of like wear you down mentally, kind of stuff. Do all that traveling in a week, and then come home and play on Saturday. I could also see how this doesn't happen to Samson teams typically, but in terms of college basketball things that could happen, Houston has Oklahoma State and Colorado next week, kind of at a middle of the Big 12 season kind of thing. You got Oklahoma State, a team you've already beaten by over a dozen points at their place to open Big 12 play, bringing them back home. Got to feel pretty good about that one on Tuesday. Colorado next weekend, I guess, did beat UConn and Hawaii, but their next best win might be the U of Pacific. Colorado hadn't beaten a Big 12 team yet this year. And so you could see how a non-Kelvin Sampson team could like already be on like glorified bye week, right? Because those are games you ought to win without, having to work crazy hard to win. You got a big talent gap, etc. I could see how a non-Kelvin Sampson team would be like going into that, like already looking ahead to like, hey, we got a pretty easy week coming up, guys. I don't think that will happen to Sampson's team. I don't think that'll happen in Fertitta Center with the blue out and all that kind of stuff. And that might be part of the brilliance of scheduling that off for this weekend. But I could see how that happens to other people. And once upon a time, it probably could have happened to Houston. I would think more about which specific year or which specific games or whatever. But that is something that happens in college sports more often than not, right? I do think that there's also some, as the winning streak grows, some stress about the winning streak, both the Big 12 regular season win streak. This team hasn't lost a game since Thanksgiving, or since the Thanksgiving week anyway, when they played San Diego State. That's a lot. That's November. That was before the BYU football game. I mean, like this is a long winning streak in terms of real days, right? And so, kind of the pressure of that mounting as they go, I could see kind of adding some stakes to this one. I weirdly think, though, the two stakes having to do with this one have almost nothing to do with what's on the floor. Houston's the staff, the players, I don't mean this negatively, they can get really superstitious. For however many years now, if Houston's wearing white, the guys on the team will wear last year's white game shorts to warm up. Black, red, the same thing, right? And so you'll see guys wearing that. Like, it's a very like routine thing that they always do. You'll see guys doing the exact same warm-up routine, the exact same pregame outfit, the exact same shoes and sneakers. Like all these things matter. Kelvin Sampson's polo doesn't change until they lose, so he'll wear the black one, I guess, until something goes awry, and then he'll change to a gray or a red or a charcoal or just a different black one or something like that, right? He keeps that going. The staff keeps their quarter zips going in the same kind of vein. They're very, very superstitious. So wearing blue this weekend, yes, wearing blue this weekend is new. They've got a winning streak going in black. They worn white at home a couple times, but also the blackout game recently, which was they wore black. Um, I don't mean to say that there's actual karma in that. I'm not that person. I will say though that if they lose this game to Texas Tech on Saturday, the blue uniform is going to get blamed for it, for better or worse. they just are. I don't think that makes much sense, but I could see it being what happens. Now, that's one thing that really, again, like that's a marketing thing that is outside of the program. They're going to wear blue at a game against a Texas-based Big 12 school in every sport once a year, right? And it's a fun deal. The blue stuff, not just because I got it on myself. It looks good. It looks crisp. It looks clean. The city of Houston loves it. People across the country think it's crisp, right? It's all good things. The other big thing that's completely like outside the control of the basketball program that's like weirdly at stake in this game is the football staff's having a massive junior day for recruiting. Keyshawn Henderson, the commit, the top 2026 kid in the state of Texas, who's committed to the University of Houston. Keep Houston in Houston, folks. Key to the city, wear your raccoon skin cap and all those kind of things. Ask questions about him later. He'll be involved. A handful of other big-time 2026 kids from the greater Houston area will be involved. There's some kids from across the state as well, and a couple I'm hearing from the boot. It's a lot of people there for junior day as recruits, and kind of like the entertainment is Houston Cougar basketball. Now, I love what Willie has done as far as using Houston Cougar basketball as like an example of like, listen, if we work as hard as we should, if we get the right kids in, if we build the culture, that kind of dominance is possible here. I love using them as an example across sports. Kelvin's done it the right way, and it's very clear that it's possible. It also, because the basketball program has done it first, or at least is the one that has gotten to this level out of the programs on campus right now. And volleyball is close, but that's not here or there. What it does is it puts an inordinate amount of pressure when you make them the entertainment of this game. And so, we'll see how that adds to it. If you come out there and it's not a crazy crowd and it's not a great basketball game, you really might lose a kid. Now, I don't think that'll happen. I think it will be a great crowd because the blue uniforms and all of that. And for what it's worth, they also think that Houston should have a fun time blowing out Texas Tech. Now, if I think I'm wrong, way off, not that far off, spot on, anywhere in the middle, tell me in the comments down below or find me on social media at Painsworth512, wherever you're on socials these days, and we'll talk about it. Houston wearing Houston blue this weekend, hoping to blow out the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I think it's going to be a 15-point game. Talk to you guys live after the game on Locked On Coogs on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you know when we go live. Locked On Coogs is primary of the Locked On Podcast Network. It means your team every day. Go Coogs.